I've been working on my book for an entire year. It has been a very long process, but a very satisfying one as well. And in honor of having spent 1 year working on and writing my book, I wanted to take some time to talk about things I've learned in this whole process and experiences that I've had in writing this book. If you don't know me, my name is Stephanie and I am writing my very first book, and I have no prior writing experience or training. And so this has definitely been a unique experience and a new experience for me. And I'm really excited to share with you what that experience has been. Let me give you a little bit of background onto my 1 year of working on my book. And that is, I started working on my book in May of 2024. And of course, now it's May 2025. And I spent about the first 6 months brainstorming and plotting and coming up with characters. And then I spent the next 6 months, which started in November, I started to write my book. So I have been writing my book for the last 6 months. I'm still working on my first draft. I'm 2/3 of the way done with my first draft. I'm at around 66,000 words at the time of this recording. And I am having an absolute wonderful time. I love writing so much and working on my book. It makes me so incredibly happy, and I'm happy to have found something that I truly love doing. And the first lesson I learned, which I learned really quickly, is if you want to write a book, just start doing it. Do not wait. I waited an entire year to start working on my book. I had the idea to write my book about a year before I actually started working on it. And I spent that whole year kind of going through a series of, I'll work on my book when I have time. And then I also had a lot of imposter syndrome because I have no previous writing experience. So I spent a lot of time saying, well, I'm not really qualified to write a book, and I don't have any experience. It would be really difficult. I don't have the skills. And so a combination of these things kind of affected me and it gave me pause in writing the book and starting it. And finally, one day I just said, you know what? I really want to do this, so I'm going to do this. But that was a whole year that I essentially wasted. I could have been doing writing practices. And that's the other thing. If you're not sure if you want to write a book, start a writing practice. At the very least, you'll be writing and doing something. I didn't start a writing practice either. And I really wish I had, because as I started my first draft, it was really bad. And if I had been practicing, it would have been better. But looking back on it now, I really wish I had started writing my book as soon as I kind of felt the urge to do it. That's 1 year that's wasted. For those that are unfamiliar with writing and publishing, writing a book is an extremely long process. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But that's time that I'll never get back. And honestly, I wish I had just started it a year ago. I would be so much further along today if I had, but I'm not. And that's the way it is. Lesson learned. I now want to focus on what it is like to write a book with no prior writing experience or training, because that is the experience I have right now. I've never taken any type of writing class. I didn't major in it in college. I have not been writing since I was 12 years old. I just literally started all of this a year ago. And the first thing I have to say about having to be in that situation is it doesn't matter. If I had had experience, obviously this would have been a lot easier, but I don't, and I'm still learning how to write, and I'm making progress, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. There's a quote out there, and I don't know who said it, but I've seen it around in a lot of places, and that is, every author has their first book. That means that your favorite author that has written 15 books and is a New York Times bestseller also had their first book when they had no writing experience and they were writing a book for the first time. If they're able to do it, then that means I might be able to do it too. Experience is helpful, but it's not required. With that being said, though, I have found that there were lots of resources available to me to learn the writing craft, and I still continue to learn it to this day, and I probably will as long as I write. One of my favorite resources to watch is Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures. They're on YouTube and they're free. He teaches a college class and he records it. I think it's a very good series of lectures, especially if you're new to writing. It gives you glimpses into world building, character development, plot, and even the publishing industry. And that is something that has really helped give me insights, especially as I'm writing, into what I may be doing wrong or things that I need to look out for as I'm writing. Another thing I found is just YouTube in general. There's tons of people out there that make writing advice videos, and I like to watch other author-tubers as well and learn what works for them and what doesn't and what their experience is. And the last thing is books. Books are free from the library, and there's plenty of books out there about writing and the craft. And that's another free resource that's available to inexperienced writers. In terms of the actual writing process, there are two things I want to talk about that as someone with no experience, if I had figured out a lot earlier, it would have saved me time and made me a lot more productive. The first is to figure out what makes you most productive when you write. When I started writing, I basically sat at a desk with a computer in silence and tried to write. I wasn't very successful. I was putting out some word counts, but it wasn't really a lot. I was getting distracted. I was feeling physically uncomfortable from sitting at a desk for a long period of time. And I was just getting bored really easily, not necessarily with my story, but just with sitting there typing. I started hitting roadblocks in terms of brainstorming and plotting and trying to move forward with my novel. And I started researching alternate ways of brainstorming and different writing ideas and things like that. And what I learned from that research is there's not one way to really write a book. When I picture an author, I picture them sitting at a desk on a computer writing, which probably the majority of authors do. But for me, that wasn't really working. So I decided to switch it up a little and change my environment. I started sitting on the couch. The couch is a million times more comfortable for me to write on. And when I'm comfortable, I feel more productive. I also started listening to music. Music really helps me focus and keeps me inspired. Another thing I did was change the time of day that I wrote. So I primarily wrote in the afternoons, which turns out after several months, I found that writing in the afternoons is like the worst time for me to write. I do better in the morning and in the evening. So I started writing in the mornings and the evenings and got a million times better. So overall, what I'm saying is what environment or what surroundings or how you set yourself up to write really has an impact on your productivity. And the sooner you figure that out, the better, because it took me months to figure this out. And that is time that I essentially wasted, again, because I was trying to force myself to write in situations that I wasn't really prepared to write in. The next thing I did that really helped me as a new author was create a writing routine. First of all, it keeps me very consistent. With a routine built into my daily or weekly schedule, I pretty much show up every day and write. Now, it could vary. One day I might write 200 words and another day I might write 1,000 words, but at least I'm showing up to write. And that has kept me really motivated because initially when I started writing in the beginning, I was just trying to write whenever I had time. And a lot of times that was like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I just felt like I was making zero progress on my book. And when I started writing every day or close to every day, I started to see my word count grow and grow and grow and grow. And it made me so excited to see the progress that I was making. Even over the course of a week, I felt like my word count just exploded over the course of like a few weeks just because I was showing up every day to write. Now, in terms of routine, I am talking about making myself write every day and showing up consistently, probably writing the same time every day. But what I also mean by routine is what do you do during that time that you're writing? I actually have a pre-writing routine that I kind of go through before I start writing to get me in the zone and prepare me for writing. And then when I sit down, I just have the routine. I turn on my music, I might light a candle, I put on my YouTube ambiance. For like the hour before that, I've already been thinking about what am I going to write. And because I've been writing every day, I remember what the last thing I wrote was, so I don't have to go back and review it. And by the time I sit down and write, I am just in the zone and ready. That has made me a lot more productive as well. I feel like it maximizes the time that I have, especially because I have a limited amount of time. And a routine has been hands down one of the biggest game changers for me. One thing that I noted during this entire year, and it's something I've truly never been able to solve, is balancing writing with life. Now, I am speaking solely in the sense of someone that writing is not a full-time job. I'm talking more about if you're trying to write a book and you work full-time or you have some kind of obligation that keeps you busy most of the day. It is really hard to find time to write, especially because not only am I working, but I have a house that I need to take care of. I do YouTube as like a second job, so I was doing that as well. And then I have hobbies and family obligations and social obligations. That is 6 different things I just listed going on in life. And when you have that much stuff going on, it's really hard to add another thing, which is writing a book. I struggled a lot in the very beginning with work-life balance, and I always felt like in order to do one thing, I would have to sacrifice something else. What I have ended up doing is accepting it. So initially, I'd say the first like 8 or 9 months I was working on this book, I would get so frustrated and so upset if I had to sacrifice book time. And I would get so upset that I wasn't making a lot of progress because I had other things going on in my life. I don't want to say writing became negative, because writing has never really been negative for me, but the lack of time made me really feel really negative. And I would just start to get really upset over a lot of things. I would also feel really guilty because here's this hobby and this thing I love to do and that I potentially see myself doing for a long period of time, and I felt like it was really getting the back burner. But at one point I just said to myself, at least for me, I said, there's no fix. There's no fix for having too much to do in the amount of time that I have to do it. So I kind of started to accept, and it wasn't an overnight. I wasn't one day like, oh, I don't have enough time, this is frustrating. And the next day I was like, oh, well, no. It took time for me to accept this and to acknowledge my feelings. And when I finally did, it got a lot better. So now I just accept that there may be days where I don't work on my book. There may be a day where I can't go to ballet class. There may be a day where I have to work extra, and I may not be able to do my hobbies. There may be a weekend where I have a family thing I have to go to, and that takes away all the time I have to do everything else. That's just how life is, and I just did my best to accommodate my schedule around it. Creating a writing routine did help with that, but it didn't solve it. I really just tell myself every day, I'm doing the best I can, I'm making as much progress as I can, and just saying that stuff over and over in my head and to myself is really what has helped me accept it and just kind of realize that work-life balance will be a struggle and I have to get used to it, and it will probably be here to stay. Who knows? Still, maybe one day I'll find a magic fix. I don't know, but for now it's just accepting it and moving forward. Okay, let's move on to some more writing craft related things. So things I've learned over the course of the year, specifically related to writing. The first, and this is the biggest mistake I made with my writing, is spending too long brainstorming and plotting and outlining. I spent 6 months brainstorming and plotting my book. That was way too long. Looking back, I probably should have only done it for 1 to 2 months and then moved on to writing. That is a lot of time that I spent wasted. Again, I seem to have wasted a lot of time in the last year, but it's time that I should have had to write, and instead I was brainstorming and coming up with ideas. I will say at the time, I didn't think I was spending that much time on it because I felt like, going back to work-life balance, I thought that I didn't have a lot of time, so only spending a few hours a week on it, I didn't feel like that was a lot of time, and I felt like I needed more time and more time and more time. But now that I've had this year to really reflect on what that part of the experience was like, I realized that I was searching for that perfect outline and that perfect plot. And I was trying to perfect all these things and have everything sorted out with my book before I even started writing. And now I can truthfully say, at 2/3 of the way done with my novel looks nothing like what I conceived in the first 6 months of working on this book. So much has changed in the course of this book. I've changed the outline completely. I've changed characters, like the way characters behave. I've changed major plot points. I've added new things to the book that I hadn't even thought of. And just this draft looks nothing like what I came up with 6 months ago. On top of that, I think a lot of the best things that I've come up with has been while I've been writing. So all that to say, yes, I truly believe plotting and brainstorming and outlining is good. I think I will continue to do it in the future. I just won't spend that long on it. I think for me, at least, it was really good to get the creative juices flowing and to start coming up with ideas. but I did not need to spend forever trying to perfect a novel, especially when it is barely like what my book is like today. Another thing I need to talk about is how bad the first draft sucks. It's bad. When I started writing this book, I had visions, especially because I had spent so long doing the brainstorming and plotting. I had visions that I would just sit down and I'd be writing this book and the words would flow out of me and it would make complete sense and I wouldn't need to make tons of changes and everything would be organized and it would be a wonderful first draft. I was totally wrong about that. I still remember how awkward it was to write the first 1 to 2 chapters of my book. I remember sitting there, I couldn't even figure out how to write the first line of my book. I didn't have it planned and I wasn't sure how to start it. And I remember writing the first paragraph 2 or 3 times, maybe more. And then as I was going through, I was immediately oh, I forgot to describe this setting and I didn't describe this character and I don't have a name for this character and the dialogue was just terrible. After writing that first chapter, I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if I can finish this book. It was bad. The writing was bad. I knew it was bad. And I really struggled to write that first chapter. And I was seriously questioning if writing was for me at that point because it was so bad. I will say, over the course of writing this first draft, I have seen my writing significantly improve. I'm doing better at describing things. My dialogue is improving. It's still a weakness of mine. It is a lot easier for me to sit down and write and immediately get into flow. It doesn't feel awkward to me anymore. But my first draft is still bad. Don't get me wrong. I have jumped all over the place in terms of writing and I've changed the story around. There are places where I'm just oh my gosh, I don't even know how to fix this. I will work on it in the next draft. And overall, I've already accepted the fact that this draft is going to be bad. And I'm not the only one. I actually did a little bit of research at some point and pretty much everyone says the first draft is really bad. So I don't feel alone in that. But it has been kind of eye-opening to see how bad it actually is. And it's even odd to recognize. As I'm writing even, I can recognize when something is bad. And it's really, honestly, writing is really humbling. It really is, because you can think you have this amazing idea and when you sit down to write it, it ends up sounding so bad. So yeah, I've been humbled several times while writing. The other thing about the first draft is it's very fluid. I have changed character names, I've changed character qualities, I've changed the plot, I've added things, I've subtracted things. The first draft is nothing, like I've said earlier, the first draft is nothing like I even planned when I was brainstorming and outlining. And that's something that bothered me initially at first because I felt like I was straying from my path, but now it's just kind of part of the process and I'm used to it. And the last thing I'm going to talk about today is how writing takes such a long time. At the start of this journey, I knew writing took a long time. I wasn't delusional. I wasn't I'm going to have a finished book in a month. Absolutely not. But I did not anticipate how long it actually took to write a book. Like I said, I've been writing for 6 months and I'm only 2/3 of the way done with my first draft. My first draft. There's probably going to be 5 to 10 more drafts in my future. And also, I've been working on this book for 1 year and I'm only 2/3 of the way done with my first draft. That's how much progress I've made in a year. I've brainstormed, plotted, and written 2/3 of a book. My initial perception on writing a first draft is that I would probably finish the first draft in a few months, do several more months of revisions, and probably have a finished book by the course of a year. And obviously that hasn't worked out in my favor. I'm probably looking at another 2 to 3 years before my book even gets published. I'm being for real. So after a year, I'm 2/3 of the way done. I would hope, especially because I just quit my job, I would hope that I have enough time to do several drafts this year and finish the book by the end of this year. Now that's 7 months. I think it's possible if I work really hard and if I don't have anything else crazy happen in my life. That being said, once I finish the book, I still have to send it to editors and get it ready for publishing, whether that be indie publishing or traditional publishing. If I go the traditional publishing route, that's going to add another 1 to 2 years on top of that before the book even gets published. I'm not going to go into the timing of that, just know that it takes a while. So this is a very, very long project for me. And I think when I started thinking about writing a book, I was like, oh, I'll just write a book and publish it and it'll be done in 1 to 2 years. And the reality is this is going to be years in the making. You know, I don't really have a problem with it because I enjoy writing so much, but it's just something that I wish I had known ahead of time was just how long it would take. It maybe would have given me a little bit more of a reality check and kind of prepared me for how long it would take to finish my draft, because I remember getting so frustrated early on that I wasn't making a lot of progress and I felt like I wasn't moving along quickly on my draft. And I think now it's just that I didn't have a clear perception of how long it takes to write a book. I don't think it's because I actually wasn't making progress. I think it's because I didn't realize it just takes that long. I can't believe that I have worked on this book for a year. The time has flown by, but it's been incredible. I have loved every second of it. I truly love writing. I have so much fun with it, and it has filled my day and my life with so much joy. And I'm just so happy to have found this new hobby that I love to do. I've learned a lot over the course of this last year, and I'm sure I will learn even more over the course of the next year and as my writing career continues. I really appreciate all of you, especially those that have been here since the very beginning, and I hope to see you and all my new friends more in the future.